Okay, AP Psych class, this is your first video for Unit 8A on motivation and emotion. We're going to talk about an overview of the motivational theories and then briefly talk about the physiology of hunger. And so if we look at motivational theories, motivation is in general just our need or desire, any need or desire that drives our behavior. And so this is always a very interesting topic because when we talk about, why people think what they think or do what they do, obviously their need or desire to do so plays a huge role in why they think and act the way that they do. There are four main perspectives on motivational theories. Of course, theories are just our attempt to explain why things happen the way they do. And so, each of these theories is going to have, obviously, its own pros and cons. But the first theory is looking at motivation from a more instinctual or evolutionary psychology approach. And remember that an instinct is some complex behavior pattern that is fixed throughout a species and is not learned. And so the biggest mistake that AP Psych students have is that we think that instincts just is as simple as a trait that is passed from parent to offspring. It's much larger than that throughout an entire species. And so from an evolutionary standpoint, there might be some needs or desires that having those benefited the survival of the species as a whole. And so that's why even today, thousands of years later, we still have these needs or desires. It explains some human motives, but not all. And so, it's limited in its scope. Drives and incentive theory is think of as drives being something that pushes us and incentives being something that pulls us. A drive is going to be a physiological need that creates some sort of aroused state that kind of pushes us to do something to return back to homeostasis or balance. That's our goal. And incentives will be something environmental. And so while our drives tend to be more internal, more physiological, the incentives also pull us to do certain things by being some sort of positive or negative stimuli in our environment that either lures or repels us to, do something or not do something. And so when we have a need and an incentive together, we have a very strong motivation to do something. The third theory is optimal arousal, and this theory explains why some individuals tend to do things that go beyond homeostasis. I mean, how do we explain things like curiosity or, people that do things like climb Mount Everest just to do it? And so human motivation doesn't just eliminate, doesn't just aim to eliminate arousal, but sometimes it's to seek an optimal level of arousal, to overcome boredom, or again to satisfy some sort of curiosity. And the final theory is the hierarchy of motives. You actually have already learned this one because we jumped ahead to Unit 10 prior to our winter break. And so think Maslow and hierarchy of needs, and that there are going to be some things that need to be satisfied before a human being can achieve what Maslow called self-actualization. Remember, that's being the best, possible self that you can be. Okay, hunger is often used as an example in units like motivation and emotion because it's something we can all identify with. And so it definitely drives people to do certain things. And so let's talk about the physiology of hunger in this video. Okay, some triggers of hunger. Physically, you're going to have things like stomach contractions, right? But that's really not the only thing that lets us know that we're hungry. We have some body chemistry and brain chemistry that kind of do this as well. The key here is glucose. That's your blood sugar. And so that's going to increase the release of insulin, which is a hormone secreted by the pancreas, which will level out the amount of glucose in the bloodstream. your stomach, your intestines, your liver, they all tell the brain whether or not glucose is being deposited or withdrawn from the bloodstream, letting us know whether or not we need to, regulate the amount of glucose with food intake, or, too much is in there, and so we need insulin to, regulate it. And so hunger in the brain, like maybe not feeling a stomach pang, but still feeling hungry because your brain is telling you you're hungry, might be a result of that system of glucose regulation. Additionally, hunger is also controlled in the brain by our hypothalamus, and so that sensory switchboard is also going to let us know when glucose, we need more of it or less of it. The hormone released by the stomach is called ghrelin, and so the hypothalamus is the one that is determining or monitoring the amount of ghrelin that's in our bodies. And so, if you've heard of anyone that's ever had the bypass surgery, where they've had, their stomach made smaller through surgery, that's kind of one of the things that leads to the fullness. Not only is the stomach physically smaller, so less food fits inside, but also because there is less stomach, it means that less ghrelin is produced, and so that can also lead to that feeling of fullness. Two things to keep in mind with the hypothalamus. The lateral hypothalamus, just remember, large hunger. The lateral hypothalamus is what controls the eating, right? Stimulates eating. The ventromedial hypothalamus, think very minuscule hunger. That's what lets you know that you are full, or that you're, no longer hungry. And so the key there is, if we stimulate the lateral hypothalamus, people will eat. If we stimulate the ventromedial hypothalamus, they won't eat. And the key here is that if you destroy one of those or the other, it will have the opposite effect of what it's intended to do. So destroy the lateral hypothalamus, people will starve to death. Destroy the ventromedial hypothalamus, they will eat themselves to death. And so that's always kind of tricky on tests, so just keep that in mind. And then the last thing to mention here is your set point or settling point. And that's your weight thermostat. And so know that this will play a role in later videos when we talk about obesity and weight loss, that we all have this, basal metabolic weight, and that's kind of your body's resting rate of energy expenditure. And so that could be changed with gradual weight loss. So maybe settling point is a better description than set point. But that also explains why really rapid weight loss tends to not work in the long term, because we kind of all have this thermostat, and if our body falls below that too rapidly, it obviously generates this desire to eat, which is why, people that are on crash diets often refer to the, this feeling of starvation, which, isn't going to work for weight loss in the long run. And so those are the basic introductions to this. In our next video, we'll talk about the psychology of hunger and the physiology of obesity, just as a further explanation of motivation and behavior. So bring your questions to class, and thanks for listening.